Today we'll be discussing how mercantilism furthered globalization, how it set the stage for capitalism, and how native populations reacted to these ideas and concepts. But first, we need to know our definitions. So, what is mercantilism? It is an economic theory or ideology in which all wealth in the world must be captured because it is a finite resource. It begins around the 16th century and is a very European concept. In fact, you may even call it Eurocentric, due to it predominantly existing to make European nations wealthy. It was so important to them because being poor is lame. Now you may ask yourself, wait a second, doesn't mercantilism also make the colonies wealthier? And the answer is yes, it
Yeah.
does. However, it does so in a sense that it requires the colonies to be loyal to the homeland because of the fact that all things must be processed at the homeland, creating this dependence. Now that we define mercantilism, we should also define globalization. So, what is globalization? It's a, well,
Oh, you stink!
hold on, let me go ask somebody. Dude, what's globalization? Well, it depends which perspective you're asking from. What do you mean it depends? Well, McCowan, a historian of transnational migration, argues that globalization is a system of consecutive harmonization and fragmentation. He also argues that globalization is a driving force in development of people, global environmental. All generations seem to be obsessed with their own technologies and barriers of free trade. Okay, did you get all that? Okay, now that I've wasted about 2 minutes of you guys' time, I'm actually going to talk about what brought me to this topic. So, last year I made a Dutch East India Company video, and the entire background of that video relies on mercantilism because it's what the Dutch were essentially using, although they were a bit heavier on the trade aspect. Um, but I never really defined mercantilism in that video, and I never really talk about it as much, even though it's like the main driving factor. And so I feel like this is gonna work well with that video. Oh, and if you haven't watched that video, don't worry. Here's a recap. Here you go. All right, now that we got all of that out of the way, I think I'm gonna start around 1492, or at least mention it because that's about when I would argue mercantilism starts. And then I'm not exactly sure where I want to end, but I think I want to introduce capitalism. But I also know there's a very broad and lengthy time frame, so I don't know if I'll cover all of that. For my definition of globalization, I'm more than likely going to be using Welsh and Vivanco's definition, though I'm also going to be placing an economic lens on top of this. I will also be touching on colonization as well because it becomes pretty important to mercantilism. So far I have two sources, both of which are from JSTOR. My first source is mercantilism and the idea of progress. My second source is the political economy of imperialism, decolonization, and development, although I'm not feeling as strongly about this one, so I may or may not use it. This is just speculation, but I might also be using Vermeer's hat just because it touches heavily on mercantilism and the Dutch East India Company. And one issue I may encounter is keeping my topic concise. It looks like I have a lot of different ones going on at the same time, so I'll have to check about that. Another issue is that my time range is very, very lengthy if I am going to try to cover all the way from 1492 up to the start of capitalism. I don't know if that's entirely realistic for the course of this paper. Okay, that's all I have for you guys. Does anybody have any questions? Please let me know. Goodbye.